Welcome to Leaders of Today. My guest is Lisa Lisser, the founder of LZL Coaching, where she helps individuals and families navigate divorce, co-parenting, and major life transitions with compassion and clarity. Drawing from her background as an attorney, educator, spiritual counselor, and certified divorce coach, Lisa brings a wealth of experience to her clients. Her journey started as a teen who excelled in school and theater, but often felt she had to lead without asking for help. Those lessons now fuel her mission to remind others that they don't have to go it alone. Through her H2O co-parenting program, her Divorce Decoded, and her podcast Dishing on Divorce, Lisa empowers people to find their voice, embrace possibility, and create a future they love. You're listening to Today's Leaders, from teens to titans. Hi, I'm Lorraine Connell, a teen leadership coach. I transitioned from teaching chemistry to coaching teens in leadership, helping them realize they can do hard things. We've often believed that leadership is an innate trait, but it's actually a skill that you build and improve. On this show, you'll meet today's leaders who share their teenage experiences, revealing how they developed confidence, direction, and the tools to become the leaders they are now. You'll discover how you or the teens in your life have the potential to become confident leaders, even if it doesn't seem possible. Welcome, Lisa. I'm so excited to have you here today.
I'm so excited to be here, Lorraine. I think that the work that you do with teens and leadership is so powerful, and we need all the leaders we can grow, right? That's what we need.
That is absolutely true, and I can't wait to get your story so that it helps my listeners develop their own confidence. So let's go back. Tell me about your teenage years and how those experiences as a teenager are showing up for you today.
Okay, so it's really interesting because I hadn't really thought about this until you asked. But if I go back to high school, I was a leader in high school. I excelled in school. I'm actually a really good student. I like school, and I got really good grades, and I did all the things. I was in the Leo Club, but not the Key Club. I found my passion in theater. So I spent my time in choral groups and in doing shows and auditioning. And when I think about those years, what I was leading with was my passion, right? Like I wanted to pursue something that wasn't necessarily the normal track. And I had that feeling a lot of the time that I was an outsider on the inside or an insider outsider. Like all of the films that we were watching back then were about the oddball who became the hero. And sort of, I was kind of in that role maybe, although I don't know if I ever felt like I became the hero or that I wanted to be. I just wanted to follow my path. And I was lucky because my parents said, pursue theater if that's what you want. And I was able to go to a theater arts camp and really explore. And that's where I was like recognized for my talent. And I was like, wow, I actually am doing the right thing. And it was the first time that I went to camp without my twin sister. So, that's a whole other piece of it. But as identical twins in a class of 500, people knew who we were. So we walked leadership without knowing it because people were kind of always watching us. But we took different paths. And she did leadership in our Jewish world. We were in Jewish youth group, and she became the president. And I didn't run when she was running because I wanted to make sure that, we wanted to give each other the strength when we needed it. We didn't apply to the same first choice colleges because we didn't want to step on each other's shoes or miss out on the chance to get into our first choice. So that was how we sort of walked through our leadership, was sort of stepping aside when maybe we needed to step aside, which is really interesting when I think about it now. But I made choices, and I think of my choices now as leadership because they fed my identity, and I was proud of my identity. I liked being the theater girl. And senior superlatives, I was voted best actress in our class. And that was for me, a pinnacle. But I also got people together. I made choices. So if I go back even further, when I was in fifth grade in elementary school, we learned about debate and we had to pick topics for debate. And at the time, girls were just being allowed to play Little League. Now,
Mm.
I was not a girl who wanted to play Little League, but in the debate, I picked the topic that boys should play girls' sports. And I argued that the boys should play jump rope with us on the playground. And I got myself a debating team and we picked that topic and we won. And then the boys started playing jump rope with us. So, like, for me, that might be like the first leadership. Like, I found something important and I followed it. I gathered people around me and they joined. I'm fighting saying they followed because
Hmm.
they joined.
Yeah.
It's a different thing.
Yeah, that's an interesting nuance of joined versus follow.
Yeah.
You know, it was curious to me when you mentioned that you have a twin sister and how you guys sort of navigated each other's relationship. And it almost made me think about the opportunity of being a twin sort of presents leadership at an early age. And maybe it's because you and your twin sister took those opportunities, but it made me reflect on, do twins have something unique because they're navigating the world together, especially I would say identical twins, because they do have to create their own identity or they do have to choose to be
The
identical
twins.
in everything.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So I'm curious to know if you think that that was an opportunity that may not be available to a single sibling or a single individual child.
You know, that's a really interesting question because part of being an identical twin is that you're on display because you're sort of this unique thing. So people know who you are, people are intrigued, and they come
Mm.
to you and ask you questions. And then it was really my parents who said, "You aren't defined as the twins. You don't have to be. You can develop your own interests." And so we did. But what we interpreted that as, because that was a very young age, was that you're not allowed to have the same interests.
Mm.
So we made space for each other to excel in different places. And whether we did that intentionally or maybe out of insecurity or because we were rule followers, if that was the rule, that was the rule. That's okay. I don't mind. I don't miss practicing piano. I'll take up singing. That's what we did. And so I guess it did force us maybe in a different way to become leaders because we had to discover what was individual about ourselves. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. What an exciting opportunity. And yet, maybe a little bit lonely because you couldn't be each other's friend in a way that felt like you could do the same things and be in the same places. But the result is pretty exciting.
Yeah.
I'd love to know a little bit more about how the asking for help, where did that show up that you didn't feel like you could ask for help?
It's a question again of following rules, I think. I thought I was supposed to know stuff. And if I was a leader, I definitely was supposed to know things. So if I keep on going back in time, we were splitting sticks in some game and there were 7, right? So we had to figure out, what do we do with this? So instead of asking for help, I tried to break it over my leg and I wound up jamming it into my finger and having to get stitches. But that's the beginning of so what do we do about this? Another time as a kid, and lots of kids do this, we were at a friend's house who had just moved and she had a piñata. So we thought to ourselves, we have to find the solution. How do we hang the piñata and play? Well, the only place there was a place to hang it was on the window rod, on the curtain rod. And so we played piñata and we broke the window, but we didn't ask the question. And maybe we were being creative, but maybe we didn't think we were allowed. And so as I got older, like I didn't ask for guidance from my guidance counselor on where I should apply to college. I just thought I was limited to choices because I knew I had to go to a state school because my parents couldn't afford private school for twins. So that was the rule. So I just lived in that box. But I was also in the top 5% of my high school class. And my guidance counselor didn't come to me to say, well, there are all these scholarships you could apply to. Let's try. I didn't know I could ask. I didn't know it existed because I was only looking in the box. And when I was a counselor at a day camp, and so now I'm going forward again, now I'm like 19 years old. I had a group of 7-year-olds. And when I come into communities, people sometimes think I've always been there because I have a way of connecting, and I'm really proud of that. That's just
Yeah.
part of who I am. I build community. And I think people just thought that I would know, so no one told me, but I was allowed to get a bus to transport my 7-year-old girls from camp to our field trip. But I knew that the older groups all walked. So I didn't know that I was allowed to get a bus. So I walked my little 7-year-olds like 2 miles. I mean, and we had fun, but it was a busy road. And I was like, we were, herding cats. But by the time we got there, we were really tired. And we had to walk the colonial village that it was. And I'm like, how am I going to get these girls back? And I'm sitting panicking until I see someone else from camp who had a field trip. And they said, why don't you get a bus? And I said, I didn't know I was allowed to ask for a bus. I don't even know I was allowed to ask for instructions because I thought I was supposed to know.
Yeah, it's interesting how, like, part of it is you following rules and you not knowing how to ask for help, but it's also like all of these missed opportunities for adults to have demonstrated that asking for help is possible. I was working with a group of students yesterday, 7th graders, and we were playing this game where they had four adult teachers available to them for help. And we told them that they had these resources available. And every time they played the game, they didn't ask for help. And so it was really interesting for me to watch this happen. And I even inserted, like, does anybody remember what the resources were that we have available to you? So hearing you talk about not knowing that you could ask for help, and also a lot of maybe at that age of modeling that asking for help is not okay. It's like all of this messaging that goes into that interpretation.
Right? Like that's all part of it because you also think that success is figuring it out yourself, right? So if I'm going to do this and be successful, I can figure this out myself. I know how to do that. And I did navigate ways to figure it out myself, but I could have done it differently. And I think that's what I have learned now. And that took me through all of my years. It's taken a long time for me to recognize that yes, I can ask for help, to admit that no, I don't know everything, and to allow that vulnerability to be a strength.
Yeah, and I think of how often the message is shown to us that if you are successful, you did it on your own, you pulled yourself up by your bootstraps. And in reality, we all bring a service to the world. And if we try and do everything on our own, then we're not providing the service that our believer, our God, whoever we're believing in,
Right.
provided us the opportunity to serve others with.
Right. That's amazing. That observation is that we're here to be in community. That actually, the very first negative thought in the Bible is that man should not be alone. Like, that's the very first thing. You should not be alone. And the whole story that's like the foundation of Western culture in the Bible is rules on how to be a community. And so that became like in my adulthood, building community became my passion. And I did start breaking some rules. And maybe I rubbed some people the wrong way because when I felt like I had a mission, I went forward, and not everyone likes that. And so you bump up against people, and that's uncomfortable.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit, because you are a self-diagnosed rule follower? So how did you go to breaking some norms and breaking the rules and being okay with doing that?
So I think what I recognize is that there were things I had to do regardless of what the format or rules were. There was a moment when I was leading a delegation of people on a trip to Israel that I wasn't the coordinator of the trip, but I coordinated my community to come. So we were six
Okay.
people. And it so happened that our partnership was having a march. We had a community that we were twinned with, and they were having a march in their area. And I thought that would be a great demonstration of community. And it was like on the philosophy of what the theme of the mission was. So I offered that to the chairs of this mission. And they were not happy that I came up with something that was not theirs, and that I offered it out of the time frame of when they were supposed to be planning the trip. So even though it was a great opportunity, they wouldn't incorporate it into the mission. But they did allow me to bring my contingent of 6 people and step off of the mission to do this other activity. So I got what I needed, at least for part of the trip.
If you're listening to this podcast, you're already part of something bigger. You're part of my advocacy team. Leaders of Today and Peers Not Fears exist to amplify voices at the age when so many of us were having moments that shaped who we became, sometimes in silence, sometimes without support. These conversations are about what happens when voices are heard earlier, when leadership is named, and when young people are reminded that they matter. As we move from building these programs to sharing them more widely, my ask is simple. Help us carry these stories forward. Share an episode, talk about the work, pass it along to someone who works with youth, supports teens, or believes in the power of early leadership. Because when we normalize telling these stories and believing in young voices, we don't just change individual lives, we change what's possible.
Part of the group, but I rubbed a lot of people the wrong way because I didn't understand why they didn't think this was such a great idea. And I didn't follow the political steps that I needed to follow to get what I wanted. And sometimes that's true, right? And so when I look back, I wonder, how could I have done it differently to have really gotten what I needed? And to also, and this is something that I've developed now as a coach, specifically in co-parenting, how could I have seen it from their perspective and shared that I understood what they were coming from? We actually have a shared vision for the goals of this trip, and this activity I was offering furthered that vision. But I needed to use language that they could hear instead of language that all they heard was, she's trying to force her way into leadership. Like, that's what they heard.
Yeah.
That's what I think they heard. And it's not her job. Why is she trying to do that job? And that was hard to receive. And that made me feel smaller. But I didn't let it go. And that's why I was able to get my 6 people on the trip to do that activity, which was unbelievable. And when we got back and rejoined the group, everyone wanted to hear what we did. So I felt it was a both and.
Well, and that actually leads me to ask you a little bit about how that translates into what the work that you're doing now is. So you were able to take that experience and understand that the method of request, the process in which you approached the request was met with resistance. And now you're working with co-parents, you're working with divorced. Tell me, your clients of divorce, are they the couple that's being divorced? Is it one or the other?
So primarily I work with one person at a time, although I also do mediation coaching. And right now I'm working with a couple in that context. And when I do co-parenting work, my goal is to work with both of the members of the co-parenting team. But primarily right now I'm working with one. And what I have learned over the course of my years is that how you deliver the message may be more important than the message.
Wow.
And I take my clients through a values clarification so they understand who they are instead of being just a mirror of the person they're trying to convince. We have mirror neurons. This is science. If someone is fighting against you, you're going to fight back. So how do we relinquish that desire to fight back to say, okay, I hear what you're saying. In fact, we share a commitment to this value.
Yeah.
Let's see how we can make that work.
Wow. That ties so neatly into the work that I do with teens in terms of understanding your zones of comfort. And when parents and teens have a common language, it really allows us to understand what is happening to that other person. And so what I always talk about is that we're told to step outside of our comfort zone. Everybody hears that message, but nobody shares that there's a zone that is outside of that comfort zone. That's called your panic zone. And in that panic zone, you're in survival. So you'll see fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And when those stimuli, or when you're feeling that such discomfort and you're reacting in your survival mode, that mirror, that partner is going to mirror your discomfort, which is only going to reinforce that feeling.
Yeah. So when we talk about that, and this is part of my co-parenting work, the in the box thinking and the out of the box thinking, we look at it as mindset. Like when we have an inward mindset, we are in the box. We only know what we've experienced before. We see that the conflict is happening. It's coming. No matter what I do, the box is always thinking.
Yeah.
It's universal thinking. But if we step outside the box with an outward mindset, I can say, where are they coming from? Like, what are the values that are underlying their behavior? And it's a hard thing to do. In co-parenting, we don't call it empathy. We call it strategic empathy.
Say more.
So what that means is you're not being empathetic with their position because they deserve it. You're doing it because your kids deserve it. And you're doing it because if you experience strategic empathy, you have a more likelihood to get what you want, right? Like if you are thinking, okay, I don't believe they really have my kids' interests at heart. But if they did, if I could give them some grace, and I know they love our children, I know they probably want what's best for our kids. Their perspective is just opposite of what I want to do. But how can I hook into the fact that we both love our kids and want what's best for our kids? Because that's what we share. And so that's strategic empathy. The other one is afraid of something. Like with me, what I see under the anger and the aggression and the oppositional behavior, there's fear under that, and there's insecurity, and there is a feeling of loss of control. And so how do we communicate in a way that acknowledges those feelings and doesn't cross them, right? Like when we're triggered, it's because a value that we need is being crossed. That's not the word I want to use. It's being threatened.
Challenged,
Yeah, it's being challenged. Like my identity, my integrity, like the fact that I'm capable is being questioned. So how can I say to my co-parent who never picks the kids up on time and always makes them wait, how can I communicate to them that that's not okay, right? What words can I use? Can I say, look, I understand scheduling is hard, but our kids need to know that they're going to get picked up on time because it makes them insecure and they get afraid. And it's about the kids. It's not about me that you need to pick them up for me. You need to pick them up for them.
Yeah. Wow. I love this so much. And when you were started talking about values earlier, I didn't connect the dots until you just brought that back. And I know that when I had the biggest challenge of my career, it was because my value of integrity was being challenged, but I didn't know what my core values were.
right?
It wasn't until I figured out and discovered what my core values were that I was able to like really step back and be like, oh, when this happens, it makes me feel so aggravated because of my core value of integrity. And then I was able to approach this conflict in a much different way.
Yeah. And that's why I start with values. And I have to tell you, when I was starting coaching and they trained us to start with the best self exercise, it felt a little too touchy feely for me. I
Okay.
didn't quite understand it. I'm like, people are reaching out to me because they want concrete direction on how to pursue the strategy of divorce. But then I realized that people need touch points. And as you were saying, you didn't know that integrity was your core value. So you needed to ask the question, right? Someone needs to ask you the questions so we could start remembering and articulating, what is it that's most important to me? What are the values I want to instill in my child? And how do I model them? If I want my child to value peace and security, how am I fostering that if every time they see me with their dad, I'm fighting with him? So that's how we frame the co-parenting work. And it's leadership because we need to lead ourselves.
Yes. I love that. I love that so much. And you can't lead others until you acknowledge that leadership starts within. And I found, I was in these roles of leadership, right? Teacher, parent, coach, advisor, but I wasn't willing to accept my role as a leader. Once I acknowledged my leadership of myself, everything else then made so much more sense. But I'm not a leader. I'm not good enough. I'm not this. I'm not that. And then it was like, once the acknowledgement of self-leadership came, everything else sort of fell into place.
And the thing is that that's so true. And it's so hard to walk that path because there are people outside of you who will say to you, oh, you're not a leader.
Right.
I mean, I will share an experience I had. I was already a grown up with 3 kids, and one of my children was being penalized for breaking a rule that on a trip that no one actually saw her break. And I mean, it was one of those things on a teen tour that they're not supposed to do. And it's very possible that she did the thing, but no one actually saw it. It was all hearsay. And I also, at the time, was the chair of the committee that funded the group. And so when I said with my justice voice, like, you can't kick this group of kids out of the program if you don't actually know what happened, if you didn't really see it. And instead of treating me like a leader, they said, you're just a mother trying to defend your kid. And it was very demeaning.
Yeah.
And I stood my ground, even though I didn't know for sure if she did it or not. And even if she did it, I didn't care because they didn't have any justification with evidence to do what they were doing. And that's when the outsiders looked at me. Now I'm wearing my mom woman role.
Yes.
It was okay for me to be a leader if I was in my lane.
Yeah.
There's so much that's part of that, and especially for girls, is that we don't know that we are being treated differently until it happens. Like, we think we're on par,
right?
But we don't know until it happens. So that's another piece.
Yeah. I mean, what I think I'd like is for you to just share a little bit about when someone comes to you in terms of divorce, like where are they in their process and how do you use your training, use your background to guide them to understand how to use strategic empathy, how to deliver a message in a way that is helpful for another person to hear? What are some of the tools that you give to your clients?
So as I mentioned first, we start by doing the values clarification work, because that's their home base. And when we talk about communication and getting what they need, I ask them to follow a couple of different acronyms. So one is called BIF, brief, informative, factual, and firm. When you are engaging with your co-parent and you always get hooked, it's because you're using way too many words. You're trying to
Aha.
convince them that you're right and they're wrong. And that's not going to get you what you want. But what will get you is if you are short and to the point, you are conveying information, not necessarily feelings, but just the information. You're civil, you're relatively friendly, but you don't have to be friends. You just have to be civil, and you're firm. You make the boundary. And with many of my clients, they have done the whole constructed a really great BIF statement. And then they say, because you always blah, 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 blah. And so I had one particular client and I said, how would it feel if you just cut it off before because? And she looked at me with like her eyes wide open, like, but I need to. I said, well, he's heard that before. He
Right.
knows that you're going to say that. But if you don't, that's going to shift the dynamic. Oh,
Wow.
right?
That is such a great tool. And I think very, very helpful in terms of parenting too, because the because and the buts and the anything that adds another segment to what you were trying to communicate often negates the first part of what you've said. And I think about that when I say my apologies and then I try and add a but and I'm like, wait, there goes that whole level of apology when I say but. And so I love that, the cut it off before the because. And I think that's really, really powerful.
Yeah.
So Lisa, let's go and share some advice. What would you give to the teenager who identifies with your story? Asking for help is not okay. Asking for help is breaking a rule. Asking for help is not within your realm of tools.
Right. So what I would say is give yourself permission to not know everything.
Love that.
You don't know everything. You just don't. None of us do. But you don't have to. And it's not weak to ask a question. It's actually strong. It shows confidence. When you ask questions, it shows that you're willing to understand that you don't have every detail.
Yes.
So I want them to be courageous about questions and not to feel like questions make me smaller, but questions actually make me bigger. So one of the things we say in co-parenting is trade judgment for curiosity.
Oh, I love that. I love that. It's so hard to be in judgment when you are being curious. And yes, I have really tried to embrace that myself for a lot of things.
So often the person who's doing the judgment is us, right? We're judging ourselves. Our inner critic is telling us, don't ask that question, you'll look stupid. And people say there are no dumb questions, but we feel like there are dumb questions.
Yes,
but
we do.
What I would say is ask yourself why you have that question, right? Ask yourself why you think you need more information. And then you'll have more confidence that it's not a dumb question. If you weren't listening in class and you're like, what, just, I don't understand, or it's just because you didn't hear. So that's a different category. I'm saying if you really have a task and you're not exactly sure how to do it, ask for some advice.
Lisa, how can people find you if they're interested in learning more about the work that you do, about co-parenting support and divorce coaching? Where do we find you?
Sure. So I have a website. It's LZLcoaching.com. You can find me there and learn about all the different kinds of work that I do. I also am an educator of tweens, actually, preteens, and I've written a spirituality curriculum for that age group. So if people are interested, they can find me through my website. The email is lisa@lzlcoaching.com. And if you're looking specifically for divorce or co-parenting support, you can find me online, but also I have a podcast called Dishing on Divorce. And with Lisa Lisser, there's other Dishing on Divorces. So it's Dishing on Divorce with Lisa Lisser. And you can go through my playlist and find the topic that you need answers to, and it will be there.
Oh, I love it. Thank you for your time today.
It's been great. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Are you ready to help the young people in your life unlock their inner strength and step confidently into leadership? The new workbook from Peers Not Fears, Your Voice Matters, Uncovering Your Unique Leadership. It's designed to help teens see the leader in themselves, step by step. It's not just a workbook. It's the first step towards a ripple effect that could change lives. Let's turn today's teens into tomorrow's titans. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Leaders of Today, Teens to Titans. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with other parents who might benefit from this conversation. Together, we can support our teens in building healthy, positive relationships and become leaders of tomorrow. Until next time, I'm Lorraine Connell, and this is Leaders of Today, Teens to Titans.